Hey, did I ever mention how important it is for everyone to make time for themselves? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about that. So, everybody has this innate need to connect to themselves, whether they know of it or not. Just like everybody has a need to go to sleep. When the body gets really exhausted, no matter what you do, no matter how important the work is, and you're going like, in the very same way, it's very important for people to connect with themselves. And here is where the concept of self becomes very interesting because what we call themselves or yourself is something quite misunderstood. A lot of times, there are people who are always focusing on themselves, their own self development, their own independence. And these people turn out to concentrate on those aspects of themselves that they find, are either lacking in some area or they just want to improve on themselves in general. And if they don't, what happens is that they start to feel internally deteriorated. I'm sure a lot of you who work and a lot of you who are out there in the world sometimes lack the sense of connecting with yourself. Why is it important to connect with yourself, and why is it important to develop certain aspects of your personality? A lot of us believe that being extroverted is, you know, something that should be celebrated, something that gives you success. And surely it does, because if you look at most of the famous celebrities out there, you know, you will notice that they're highly extroverted, good speakers. They're good in the way they post their, pictures on social media. But then there are people who are absolute introverts, sort of like yogis, people who are more philosophical or probably who are more in tune with the inner world, of the emotions, of ideas and concepts. And you get people like, because it seems like people are very interested only in talking or knowing about famous and successful people, because I believe that is the idea, to become famous and successful. So, you know, to the introverted version of this, or a person like this, is Bill Gates, of course, the how you, in a very offensive way, of course, how you label these people as pencil neck geeks and computer nerds. Even Steve Jobs was one of them. Um, these are the people behind the scenes. But if you really look at the need to connect with yourself, you understand that a lot of people see this as something that is not really essential. And many actually feel that it's kind of like time wasting. It's like it's of no use, you know? But according to yoga and according to other various streams of spirituality, this is considered to be a very, very essential part of your spiritual practice and self development. As a matter of fact, um, when if you're an empath, because you people are into spirituality, and New Age spirituality seems to emphasize on the fact that they're empaths and all kinds of things, chakras and kundalini and all of these things. So it is said that an empath is always putting themselves out of their body. I'm sure many YouTubers who are talking about this say put it out in this way, that they come out of their body, and they're not within themselves, they're not contained, as I spoke about in my root chakra and grounding video. you know and this is why, of course, what these people are saying and what I'm also saying and what I said, it's correct. You need to come back to the physical body, and you need to, because the root chakra and that pelvic area is in the form of a container, so it always means containment. Okay, so a lot of times you will find that just going out there in the world and the stress of life and just always watching other people and what's going on in their lives, and with the senses always externalized, it kind of drains the system. And so at the end of the day, with the senses worked up, with the muscles and the brain and all of these things, with the energy expended, the body, the mind, they want to rest. They want to go to sleep. They want to close. The body wants to shut its eyes. The mind wants to shut down and go and repose. In a very similar way, yoga practitioners and yogis back in those days found out that by meditating, you can actually bypass this need for sleep. And so you have this a very well-known thing that yogis don't need a lot of sleep. Well, because they meditate, so they make up for those lost hours of sleep in that way. So they connect to this very deep part of themselves, and they start to understand their minds in a more thorough manner, and they understand exactly what's going on, what is lacking, in their personalities or how their body is feeling. And that's how these people become very good in terms of intuition, and they know how the body works. They can feel the vibrations in due time, not just of their body, but because they know how it works in their body, they can feel it in the bodies of other people. So they become very intuitive, and pushed to the limit, they are able to foretell the future and all of these magnificent abilities that have been spoken about in chapter 3 of Patanjali's Vibhuti Pada. The reason why connecting back to yourself and having your time rather than always give time to others, or to what's important to them or what they're doing in their life, when you're doing this and not focusing on yourself. Remember, I'm also going to quote this gentleman. I have been kind of critical in the past, but there are a few things that are undoubtedly wonderful about this person. His name is Sadhguru. He himself said, focus on yourself. And believe it or not, even though there are a few things that I don't necessarily agree with him on a few points, on this one, definitely, because every time I do yoga, every time I sit for meditation or I'm in a difficult asana, the one thing that goes on in my head is focus on yourself. Your body, your mind, your vibration. And when you don't, what happens is, instead of the energies coming together into one union, into yoga, they go out, they become scattered, and there is turbulence. The whole point and the definition of yoga is to bring things into union. The whole point of practicing in asanas is to bring the various scattered parts of your consciousness, which is lying in the various cells of your body, into one union. Okay, it's to bring in that consciousness which is spread out through the various systems in your body and your being in towards you, so that you, because I'm learning Italian, it's called conoscere. Okay, so you recognize, what's going on. What are the cells doing? It's so deep. The practice of an asana is really, it's so deep. I find that in learning Italian, a lot of the words in English kind of like, they don't have the same kind of veracity as much as you could get out when you speak in Italian. So you would say veramente, veramente, you understand how the cells feel. And it's so profound an experience when you practice the asana, that for a second, if you lose that focus on yourself and your mind becomes externalized, you have to start from the beginning. And that's how difficult it is to practice an asana in the way it's supposed to be practiced. I'll give you a personal example. A lot of times when I'm not able to focus on myself, on the things that I want to do, it could be anything. It could be my purpose in life. It could be about how I think about my future, my place in society. And, a lot of people would confuse it with being selfish. But when you're balanced as a person, you would call it being grounded. Think about this. When you're it's a very simple example. You're going to a grocery store and you're going to buy things for yourself. There's a queue. nobody's going to be so charitable to sort of like make way for your highness, right? Nobody's going to go out of their way to think about you to that extent. You have to think about yourself. So when it's your turn, you better go in, because someone else will go in otherwise and take advantage of your openness, of your gratitude and your kindness, you know, or your patience, and you're sort of like giving, please go ahead sort of attitude. When you think about yourself, it's a very good thing. But when you think about yourself to the point that you're not thinking about others, you know, and you're being really selfish, and you're being vain, and you're being greedy, and you're being unscrupulous, that's when this concentrating on yourself becomes vain, and it becomes self-glorifying, and you will eventually become an arrogant person, you know. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way. I think a lot of people learn this lesson the hard way, you know. Look, to me, it's very simple and straightforward. I'm sure social media success is at the top of the minds of most teenagers and people, I guess, who have businesses, because, you know, that's how you get the funds and the money. And obviously, I'm being very honest and straightforward, you know, but these are the things we all know about, but it's not necessarily something that everybody would talk about. So, you know, the way social media has made it is that people start to follow you if you're very extroverted. You know, you're spicing up their feed, you know, and so people have to pose in a certain way, put a post in a certain way. They can even be genuine, and it could be genuinely interesting as well, you know. My point is that there's always a tendency and a focus to draw out the being from the inside and pull it out to the outside world. And this can be a very draining experience to a person who's particularly spiritual and who's got an innate tendency to go inside and explore that inner world. This makes practicing yoga and spirituality and meditation all the more a greater challenge, and all the more a greater achievement at the end of the day. Because when you're able to get past these things and still find time for yourself and focus on yourself, you're doing yourself a lot of good. You're able to develop on yourself and not always think about how others are developing, or not always have to think about how you need to develop others, you know. A lot of psychologists and counselors may face this problem, as a matter of fact. You know, there used to be a thing back in the day, in the Vedic age, because I teach yoga and I come from that part of that oral tradition of the Vedas and yoga and Patanjali and all of these things, right? Don't let the accent fool you. But back in those days, you know, the guru was a very mysterious person, the teacher. So, you know, he would have all the students and he would, you know, give his lessons. But he wouldn't spend his time and attention to each and every single student, you know, like how a mother does, or how a father would do, to that extent. He would just in very general explain a few things and then go back inside his hut and you know, concentrate on the meditation. That's how much time he also gave to himself, because it can be a very draining experience, you know, to always focus on the energy of others and not consider your energies. It's like you're always giving food to the other person, but you're not feeding yourself. At the end of the day, you're going to feel exhausted and drained, and you're going to be like, but what about me? You know? So it's very important. I don't know about being misunderstood as focusing on yourself, and self-development as how you see it on social media. Focus on yourself. Put yourself first so that you can become famous, so that you can develop yourself in such a way that, you know, you gain this kind of public persona where people are gonna like follow you and make you famous. I'm not talking about that kind of like focus on yourself or do your thing sort of yourself. No, at a most at a more basic and instinctual level, to focus on yourself and your needs. You know, your root chakra needs. Because if your root chakra is not developed, you can forget about the other chakras. You can forget about kundalini and ascension and all of the things that people are into, you know, with the new age spirituality and all of these things, healthy boundaries and all kinds of things pertaining to, you know, spirituality. And I follow Michael Mirdad a lot, and I recently saw a video of his talking about healthy boundaries, and he's got some very interesting videos. and it's so misunderstood. I find that he's one of the few people. In fact, I believe he came up with the term light workers, and he's one of the pioneers of New Age spirituality. And he himself, says that a lot of concepts are being, misconstrued nowadays. But let me explain to you better again. And so I find his videos very interesting, and you guys should probably check it out. But it's not about fame. It's not about being socially famous and all of these things. That you need to pay attention to yourself. You need to pay attention to yourself very basically to bring your energies back to you. The very life support of you depends on how well you're able to bring that prana together in the heart chakra and allow it to expand and go into the various cells of your body to breathe. When you find that you're in certain situations or circumstances where your breathing has stopped and you're suffocating, and you start shaking, the nerves start shaking, it's because your body is exasperated, your mind is exasperated, and it wants to breathe, it wants to take in that air, it wants to go, And when you do, is it going out or is it coming in? Is the focus out or is it in? It is in, even at the most physical level, correct? A lot of people talk about the root chakra as a chakra that is, they've got all kinds of concepts about the root chakra. But the root chakra is a very interesting chakra, and it's something that you should really study about in depth. And it's only then that you would realize how deep this whole system of vortices and chakras are really, It's not simple. It's not something that you can learn about or read about in a book in 2 years or 3 years. It takes quite a while until and unless you're born Siddha or a perfected being. A person practicing yoga every day with the utmost dedication is able to feel the functioning of the chakras. A hatha yogi does yoga because he is so connected to the body. He knows if the energies in his body have gone down in a negative way, or if they are in a higher light, in a more positive way. And if he senses any kind of negativity or fall in the energies, he does certain practices to bring it up. And that's what you call ha, ta. Ha means sun, ta means moon, to bring the energies back into balance. When he feels that the tha energy has gone too much, and it's become too much, and the ha energy, ha is the power you feel. Ta is also the power, but it's more repressed. It's more cooling. It's a very deep esoteric subject anyways. So the hatha yogi, through this esoteric knowledge of understanding this, not really esoteric, but this very deep, profound understanding of how his body works, is a he or she, how his or her body works, is able to bring the energies into a proper and a balanced functioning, So he or she starts with the root chakra. When the root chakra is debilitated, the body is cold. The root chakra is a warm chakra. The Swadhisthana chakra, which is the chakra above it, has the shape of a half moon. It has more of the characteristic of cooling. And then above the Swadhisthana, you've got the Manipuraka chakra, the navel plexus, okay, which has been assigned the Sanskrit syllable Ram, okay, and that Ram is of Rajas. It's either yellow or it's orange in color. It's very hot. It also represents the gastric plexus. The root chakra is very warm. It's a heated chakra. So I could be correct or wrong about this, but I believe Mangal, is the planet that rules this chakra. At least to me that would make sense that Mars would rule it, because it's a very powerful red. The color of the chakra is red. If this chakra is debilitated, if the energy is going outside, and I talked about this so much in my previous videos on grounding and about being balanced, how it's all about bringing the energies together and firmly bound, not like letting them out. When you let them out, you're not focusing on yourself. You start shivering, you get nervous. Imagine if you're in a situation where you can't even come back into yourself or focus on your thoughts and your ideas and the things that you want to do, right? And you're always thinking about other people or about society in general or about the news, and you're worrying about what's going to happen in the future, you're not staying in the present moment, it will destroy the functioning and absolutely disorientate the way your chakras work, especially the root chakra. Absolutely upset the functioning of the root chakra. Now, the root chakra is strengthened by a practice called Mool Bandhasan. Mool means root, Bandha means close, lock. Okay, and because I'm so deep into Hatha Yoga, which is very athletic, it's a very athletic and sport-like yoga, form of yoga, as compared to the other forms of yoga, which I, do happen to practice. When you practice Mool Bandhasan, you realize that there is so much of an effort required to pull these scattered energies back together into one union. But before you even commence doing that, you realize that before you begin doing this, that the energies itself are so scattered. If the energies were in one union to begin with, you wouldn't have to do all that pulling in. You're doing the pulling in because the energies are scattered in the first place. When the root chakra is not balanced and when you're not grounded, when your higher chakras are all well-to-do, the problem with these kind of people is that they give too much of their consciousness and awareness to the outside world. Now hear me when I say it. It's not about giving something physically or in that sense. It's about giving that conscious awareness to the outside world. People who practice yoga are taught to go within. There's a whole philosophy behind this, and I even talked about this in my previous video. Why do sages and why do great yogis, why does Shiv have his eye closed? Why does Shiv have his eye closed? I'm learning Italian, so I'm getting the have and the has incorrect over here. I know this is like, why does Shiv have his eye closed? Well, it sounds about correct. Trust me, when people speak in Italian and they're not able to talk that well in English, just cool out, just chill down, don't criticize them. It's a really technical thing. Like, I'm pretty good in English. I've been scoring the highest in English when I was in school, but Shiv has his eye closed, there I got it, not have his eye closed, has his eye closed, and because in Italian it would be have, okay, and it goes within, whereas Shakti is not like that. She's not meditative. She's all about, why go out there like, the fierce Durga power and that Shakti energy. Shiv is like, I'm just going to meditate, really, honestly. If you need my help, if there's an emergency, I'm just going to wake up and, help you out. That's Shiv, okay? So, when you're practicing yoga and when you want to get to, closer to your soul consciousness, which is Shiv consciousness, when you want to connect with that part of your being, you're taught to become introspective. You're taught to go in rather than go out. And that's where you need to understand why it's important to pay time to yourself, or why is it that you feel that you need to pay attention to yourself. Because at the end of the day, the energy, which is Shakti and Shiv, they are interdependent. They're not codependent, they are interdependent, Shiv gives a support for that Shakti to act, and this is like philosophical, you don't need to break your head about it right now, whereas Shiv needs Shakti to activate him, or to feel a sense of being alive. So Shiv without Shakti is Shav, or dead. If Shiv was forced by Shakti to kind of be like, pay attention to me, pay attention to the outside world, pay attention. There's a very good story, there's a very nice, interesting story that takes place in the Purans. But Puranas, or Puran, is this part of Hindu mythology that talks about the various legends of, Hindu gods and goddesses. And by way of doing that, they're basically philosophical poems. By the way of doing that, they explain many, many difficult philosophical things in this very poetic, simple to understand, concrete way. So there's a story of, Shiv having lost his first wife, Sati, right? And then Parvati, his future to be wife, falls in love with him, and Shiv is always about meditation and, not looking at the outside world. And Parvati, poor thing, gets infatuated with him. And, for the first time, she tries to get his attention, but he's always sort of like, let me meditate. Don't disturb my meditation. Don't disturb my meditative peace. And then you have the rascal of that episode that takes place in the Puranas, which is who is Kamdev, which is Italian. It's all right. It's a technical issue. Which is Kamdev, and Kamdev, the Hindu god of love, the Hindu Cupid, aims at Shiv and lets that arrow out, and Shiv is in love with Parvati. Like, the arrow hits Shiv, and Shiv is like meditating, and then his senses are aroused. His senses were in check, in control, and they were in him, contained over here in the heart chakra, right? And then his heart chakra got ruffled by Cupid's arrow, and then he was like, that's a very interesting looking girl over there. Damn, I never thought that she was that beautiful. And then he was like, what am I saying? What am I doing? Why am I talking like this? And then as he's thinking about this, he sees Kamdev hiding in the bush, because Kamdev, the Hindu god of love, Cupid, is like, so he knows that Shiv is this fierce and ferocious god, and if he finds out that it's because of him, and he even tells Indra, the king of gods, that I can't do this, but Indra is like, you better do it, blackmails him, and Shiv takes one look at him, and then Kamdev is like, oh, this is it, I'm dead. Pretty much that's what happens to him. Shiv, like, with that ferocity in his eyes, that tapasya, that penance, looks at him like this, and how dare you spoil my meditation, and he's burned to ashes. And Parvati is heartbroken, and she's like, what? Shiv is like, how dare you rouse me, woman? How dare you impurify me? Get out of my sight. So he tells her to get out of his sight, but he actually walks away, and she's heartbroken. So, obviously you don't want to push things. You want to give some time to yourself, but don't overdo it. I think at the end of the day, it's all about having sufficiency. It's all about having a balance, enough of this and enough of that. So it's very important to focus on yourself. But if there's a situation where, you're not able to focus on yourself at all, I'm talking about self-consciousness. I'm not talking about your personality. I'm talking more about self-consciousness at this point. Sure, you want to focus on yourself to improve certain aspects of your personality, go ahead, that's very important. But what's more important is focusing on your consciousness, and this is where we have to get more profound and more deep. This is where we really get down, and understand what it means to meditate, what is the ethereal body, the 7 koshas, the 7 sheets. So I just don't talk because, out of the blue, I've studied quite a bit and I've experienced quite a bit. So the yogi connects to these various layers of his body, and the yogi connects to these various layers of his or her. I forget the her. I'm sorry, English is just like this. Pardon me, I'm not anti-feminist and stuff, but yeah, if she is not able to connect to the various layers of her body, what happens is that there is a disparity. There is always going to be some kind of feeling of being drained, an emptiness, a vacuum, a hole, and this is why when you meditate, you don't meditate to first of all, don't always meditate to um, because it's a thing in New Age spirituality. I don't mean any criticism to New Age spirituality. Believe me, I have great appreciation and respect for it, and what I'll testify that what they say is true about manifestation and all of these things. But it's more like glorified materialism. It's not really spirituality. But I'm not saying it doesn't work or you shouldn't do it, or you shouldn't use meditation as a way to get that. You know, what I'm saying is that meditation was primarily designed to get you to connect yourself to your true self. You know, that's not going to make sense to a lot of people, you know, because it sounds so contradictory. How can you connect with yourself? How can yourself connect with yourself? What are you trying to say? So if you want to find out exactly what I'm trying to say, that's when you have to understand the 7 layers of our body, which has been talked about in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the 7 koshas, okay? And by intense and deep meditation, you find out what these layers are. You know, what's your physical body, your mental body, your pranayamic body, all of these things. You know, your psychological body. You'll find out when you meditate. I guarantee you. If your meditation is true and proper, and if your meditation is not about sitting and being like, I'm gonna manifest this, I'm gonna manifest that, I'm gonna manifest this, if it's not like this, and if it's more about feeling and becoming aware of who you are first and foremost, and then you get to the 6th part, the 6th layer of your being, and you're like, wow, over here, these are where the siddhis are located. And you come out of that meditation and you're able to foretell events or get whatever crazy superpower Marvel sort of thing, Marvel DC Comics sort of superpower going on, right? Whatever it is that you get, you know, that's when you're going to be convinced that this stuff works. But first connect. Because when you're always doing like, I will manifest this, I will manifest, you're just getting stuck at the mental level. And it's very draining, you know? That's my alarm for Italian, studying Italian. But anyways, so I'm gonna make this video short again. It's not short, it's 33 minutes. So when you practice meditation, first, my advice to you is first try to connect with the most authentic part of yourself. Okay? Don't create disconnections when you meditate. When you meditate, it's all about connecting. It's about bringing things together. It's not about separating, that the wall is separate, that this is separate, the bed is separate. If that is not the most obvious thing then to you, then I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there, because to me it's pretty obvious that everything is separate. You know, it's time to connect. It's trying to connect. It's trying to bring university. It's trying to bring unity in diversity. That's the point of meditation. You know, I don't know how many of you know how hydraulics work, or how a pressure cooker. You know, there's a valve and there's that rubber thing insulating all of that steam that builds up. So you get this like explosive super steam right inside, and that cooks the rice even more faster. So in the very same way, prana is compared or talked about in the same way as being this steam-like energy that rises up, like how Kundalini rises up. It's pretty much one and the same thing. When you practice pranayam, they tell you to practice mudras and bandhas, because that's like the insulating lid and the rubber, right, and the valve to properly contain this energy and to not let the energy leak. You know, that energy is very potent. In the very same way, when you're doing a spiritual practice, or if you're a normal person, spend some time thinking about your thoughts. You know, the music you want to listen to, the things that you want to do. Think about if you are truly correct or wrong. You know, sometimes we can be a bit too giving in the form of, you know, always agreeing to some things that you really don't want to agree with, but since you don't want to create an argument, you're just like, yes, you know, because it's too petty a thing, right? But you end up compromising on your authenticity, right? So, you know, when you're with your thoughts, it's you who is the judge. And when you meet another person, and if you're talking about the same thing and there is a disagreement, you're not, you don't get influenced. You're able to see that person's, or, you know, a group's, or a point of view of people in a very objective way. Not in the way that, oh, just because he or she said it and he or she is important, that's why it's true. No sheep mentality. It's about being a lion, you know, and the lion is majestic. It's most of the time alone, you know, if you look at it. So, tigress, in case I'm sounding a bit anti-feminist as well. Tigress is, you know, I thought we have a tigress over here. Her name is Irina. She was over here on top of those blankets. I see she's always alone. She's always in solitude. She doesn't like mingling around, you know. Tigress. Be a tigress. All right? And I'm going to conclude this video over here. Thank you so much for watching. I will join you guys next time. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about Prakriti and Purusha. Because I'm a yoga teacher, I'm going to talk about these yogic things. I'm sorry, but as best as I can, I will talk about. My intention about talking about Prakriti and Purusha is for you to understand what Prakriti and Purusha actually means. Because if you're interested in spirituality, New Age spirituality, the roots and all of that stuff, it'll be interesting to you know, listen to what Prakriti and Purusha is. Then you are going to find out a lot of things about yoga in general and spirituality in general. Because Patanjali, the first codifier of yoga, because yoga was in an oral form, you know, there was no written document. He was the first one to write it down. And his yoga places a lot of importance on Prakriti, nature, and Purusha, soul. So let's find out what these two things are and how they work in the next video. Bye-bye.